On today's episode of the Regression to the Mean podcast, we have our top 12 running backs in Dynasty Fantasy Football. I'm your host, Shaun, and I'm joined by my co-host, my good friend, my fellow knower of ball. We also know him as the mustached one, Keegan Thompson. Keegan, you're playing some rec league hockey tonight, man? Living the dream? How you doing,
Yeah.
dude?
Yeah, living the dream. Recently joined a Greenville Hockey League, and then my neighbor caught wind that I play hockey, and he knocked on my door like I was 12 years old tonight to ask me if I could play some hockey. So just small town stuff. But I'm feeling good. Feeling a little bit like Lance Armstrong. We're down one ball, nowhere today in Aidan Holler, as the viewers can see. But well, Aidan's taking a much needed work break as of more covering for him. But we're going to shed some running backs today. I honestly think this is going to be less of a dispute than our wide receiver rankings. I feel like we have similar visions on RBs, but it'll be interesting to see where we stack up against the field here.
Yeah, it's tough talking running backs and Kyren Williams without Aidan. I feel like Aidan has some very strong opinions on some of these running backs, so it's always interesting not to talk with him. But
Yeah,
we
but
just
don't worry.
recorded.
I was gonna say, don't worry for the listeners. Like, we'll get over the Kyren conversation without Aiden, but there's gonna be some Jeanty talk. I'm sure people who have tapped into this video are curious where we have Mr. Jeanty. He is ranked,
He
and he
is
will get
ranked.
discussed.
I think it's a little more difficult when they rank receivers really high amongst the elite wide receivers, but I think with running backs, it's a little bit
You
easier to
get a
get
clear
there
picture of it. Yeah.
because they're usually just. I mean, I guess rookie wide receivers are really good now. We recorded our top 24 wide receiver episode. That's in the feed. That's a lengthy one. We debated. That was a really fun episode.
Yep.
If you like that format, we're going to be following something pretty similar today. So on today's episode, we have ranked the top 12 running backs. We've broken them into tiers. It's going to be a pretty, I think we have like 3 tiers here, pretty simple stuff. We're going to talk through some of the guys that we are higher or lower on versus each other. So if someone's a big discrepancy, we'll talk why one was lower, one was higher. Pretty simple stuff. Keegan, though, I'm sure there are people, they've clicked on this video. It's the first time they're rocking with us. What should they be expecting from the Regression to the Mean podcast?
We like to talk ball. We're gonna do it in a casual format. Shaun will make sure you're filled up with the stats you need, so it will
Boss.
be actionable. Pause.
Boss.
It will be actionable. It will be casual, but stick around, enjoy it. We're treating this like, a bar top conversation you have with your buddies. You've had one too many pilsners, and you're talking about why Bijan Robinson is a little bit better than Jahmyr Gibbs. But that's the vibe we're putting off here today. And we're going to go through 12 running backs. Maybe we'll give some nuggets on some people outside of the top 12. But stick around. Give us a shot. Watch 10 minutes. If you like it, stay for 5 more. If you love it, stay for the rest of the video. If you really enjoy it, drop a like. If you're curious about why we thought something on a player, drop a comment. Our sergeant, Holler, he's not here today, but he's our dedicated comment responder. He'll be in the comments talking to all of our listeners. So just sit back, enjoy the ride. You can keep your feet and hands outside of the ride at all times if you want. It's up to you. We don't judge. But yeah, just hang out for a little bit.
Yeah, it is going to be a good time. So I'm pumped to
Shaun, I
dive
realize you're
in.
higher on the camera. I gotta up my chair here a little bit. It looks like I'm lower.
I'm standing
Oh
today.
man.
I'm standing.
Okay.
It's all
I was
about
like,
the
my chair's not going
circulation.
any higher.
It's all about the circulation. But I'll edit it in. It looks like we're going to be even
You're
with
gonna
each
enter
other.
your true tech bro fantasy football crossover when you start walking on a treadmill for these
No,
episodes.
I've tried the treadmill at work. I don't love it. It's too bouncy. It's too much noise. I don't think it's that conducive to conversation. But that's sad that I've just added myself as somebody's done that. All right. Okay. Tier 1. I don't think this is going to surprise anybody. They are the two 23-year-old super freaks in fantasy football. They are Jahmyr Gibbs and Bijan Robinson. I think they're very clearly the Dynasty RB1s and 2s. I feel like we're splitting hairs here if you have one over the other, but both of us leaned Gibbs over Robinson. So we both have Gibbs at 1. We both have Robinson at 2. I've got my thoughts on why I have Gibbs over Robinson, but I'm curious to know what your thought process was behind that rank.
Yeah, we're pretty locked here together in our rankings of Gibbs 1, Bijan 2, but you watch the body of work that Gibbs has and you take into consideration. Oh, excuse me there, listeners, but you think of how he's produced with like a fellow 1,000-yard rusher in David Montgomery in their offense, and like what he's able to do on limited touches. And it's hard for me to imagine that Jahmyr Gibbs should be anything less than one. If Monty gets injured or they move off of Monty, like in totality, like Jahmyr Gibbs would be far and away one of the best running backs, if not the best running backs in the league, and also has like one of the best roles. He's got the pass catching ability. He's also just really grown as a running back. I think it's pretty obvious to me that he is just a dynamic weapon, especially when given a majority of the backfield touches. And what he can do with a minority of the touches is also pretty crazy to me. I mean, the stretch at the end of the year without Monty was electric. I know you'll go somewhat deeper into those stats, but I know Bijan had a really good year last year, and I just think Gibbs offers one more notch, like one more level of explosiveness that even Bijan doesn't have.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's super fair, and I think it's pretty fair to say Gibbs has outscored Bijan, right? Like just straight up over the past 2 seasons. Gibbs RB10 as a rookie, Bijan was the RB9. Gibbs is the RB1 as a sophomore. Bijan is the RB3. 31.
They're both so good.
Yeah, they're both so good. 31 fantasy points per game without Monty for Jahmyr Gibbs in the final month of the year. He dropped 35 points against the Commanders in the divisional round. Like every play that didn't go to Gibbs felt like a wasted play. Like that's how talented he is. He's like getting the full-blown CMC treatment now in my brain where I'm like, just give the guy the rock. Like, I don't know what we're doing here. Run a choice route. Do it. Like anything that isn't going to Gibbs feels like we're just making this harder than it needs to be. Right.
Yeah,
like,
I
and I
one
get
of the
it.
biggest things you've talked about to me as somebody who drafts a lot of David Montgomery in like the later rounds is like Jahmyr Gibbs is so good that he makes a 1,000-yard rusher like Montgomery look like a bad option. Like Gibbs is so effective with the ball, like, and that's kind of what you always argue with us is like, it's a deterrent to the Lions to give the ball to anybody else besides Jahmyr Gibbs. Yeah,
Even like it was like, don't even go to ARSB, don't go to Laporta.
Yeah.
Like,
Don't
go to
anywhere
Gibbs.
else.
Yeah, it felt like he got 20 touches in that divisional game, and I felt like he could have gotten 30. He's just really talented, and I do think it is a benefit sometimes to have Montgomery in the fold. Even though Gibbs scored 10 of his touchdowns with Monty out, Monty continued to be kind of a vulture in that sense. I do think it is nice to keep Gibbs fresh. I think Gibbs will have, I guess, fresher legs, so to speak, when Monty is gone or a little bit later in his career. But he's still only 23 years old. I know there's concern with Ben Johnson leaving. They still have that offensive line. Monty's already recovering from an MCL injury. Monty continues to miss games. He did just get an extension, but it was like peanuts on the dollar on the NFL salary cap. I'm not too worried about it. So I'm pretty. I had Gibbs as my RB1 going into last offseason.
Yeah, you've been consistent.
Yeah, and what's weird is I almost flipped it. I was really close to putting Bijan as the RB1. As you know, I was a little bit of a Bijan hater. Maybe not hater, but just like healthy skeptic. I ended up drafting him in the big league we play in anyway, so it's not like I had a fade on him by any means. But what Bijan showed me in year 2 in terms of his growth running inside and outside as a receiver, as a blocker, as a leader, just insane development. I mean, we all knew the guy was a borderline generational talent coming out of college, and he looked like, I know it sounds crazy, but he reminds me of LaDainian Tomlinson. Like that's how talented this guy is as a rusher. And he finishes as an RB3 as a sophomore. He scores 8 TDs in year 1, 15 in year 2. I mean, Algier slowly gets phased out of this offense by the end of the year. And heading into year 3, the offensive environment, I think, improves with Penix or maybe stabilizes. I think stabilizes is probably the right word. And I think there's just a lot of meat on the bone in the pass game for Bijan now. Like Penix isn't a rushing quarterback, right? I think he continues to get more love in the pass game. And I just think he's a really special talent. And he may just get more touches than Gibbs next year and he finishes the RB1. But both these guys are elite. But yeah, what are your thoughts on Bijan, Keegan?
Yeah, so many things you said that I resonate with. I think him and Gibbs have a lot of qualities that like set them above everybody else. But what Bijan has to me that like is kind of similar to Saquon, who we're talking about a little bit here, but it's like elite abilities at like every part of the running back position that you really want. Like his vision is like so impressive. And like you said, he's gotten more impressive as a runner between the tackles. He's also an elite pass catcher. He does have breakaway speed when he gets free. He has such quick feet too. I also have my note here, like he's built to bash. Like he is not the frame that Jahmyr Gibbs is. Like he can go toe to toe with a linebacker and break tackles. I think he always has a serious case for RB1 as long as he's healthy. And one of the things that I liked about Gibbs and like what he's able to produce is like Bijan had a similar situation where sharing backfield touches, right? But like David Montgomery was obviously many tiers above Tyler Algier, and Bijan was still like having to deal with split backfield, and that's kind of where I look at Gibbs and like what he was able to do with less touches was so impressive. But Bijan's right there, right? Like the game breaking stuff that you talk about and how he's going to be involved in the game next season with Penix at quarterback, who's not really a rookie, but he's still a rookie by play time, I think will be really interesting. I think he's going to get leaned on a lot more.
Yeah, I think, again, you saw this. There was a stretch from weeks 4 to the bye where Algier was pretty heavily involved. It was like 60-40. And then coming out of the bye, they were like, we're done with this. It's 75-25. And he was even like, when these games really mattered, where they had to win, 90% of the snaps. So
I think
the
they
coaching
know what
staff
they have
leaned
too.
in.
Yeah, like I think they understand, and Bijan's path to like an RB1 finish is simply just the Atlanta Falcons giving him the ball more. That's all it really comes down to.
Moving on to our RB3 here, start of tier 3. So we have 3 guys in tier 3. We have a bit of a discrepancy. I've got Saquon Barkley here as my RB3. You've got him here as your RB4. And you had Achane at RB3. I had Achane at RB5. So I'm curious, why Achane over Barkley? And again, I'm a big Achane guy, but I'm curious, what's your lean on Achane heading into year 3?
It's just obviously Dynasty, right? Like you have 4 years in between the two, but like I have my notes for Saquon, and this goes. I think the proof is in the pudding with Derrick Henry. Is like we should probably start to abandon age, especially like 28, 29 for running backs, because the new age athletes are just so different. Like they came up training different, your diets are different. Like I don't want to dock Saquon for his age necessarily, but I only have him one spot below Achane. But I think Achane is probably the most similar running back in the league to Jahmyr Gibbs, although the frame is smaller. I think what impressed me the most with Achane was like, and I knew this coming out of college just because I watched him a ton as a Texas A&M fan, is like he can handle a true running back workload. And as Mostert gets phased out and, their slew of running backs they have in the Dolphins backfield just like does not get the same attention. Achane can handle a massive workload as a running back. And then the way they treated him as a pass catcher this year too, like not just lining up out wide a couple of plays here and there, like fully designed Achane plays like in true wide receiver sets. Really, really impressive. And I'm just super bullish on his explosive ability. And I feel like he got hampered more by his situation than a lot of these running backs. Breece, I feel similar on, but I think situationally, Devon Achane had it the worst last year. The offensive line was bad. Tua missed time, and the Dolphins are not a team that is set up to succeed when players go out. Key players on the offensive line and Tua missing. But his home run speed, his ability to catch the ball, and line up as an actual wide receiver, not just a running back out wide. I think there's a big difference there. And be able to withstand like a heavy rush load as well, too, at his frame was super impressive to me this year.
Yeah, what was interesting was year 1 for Achane was efficiency in big plays, right? Year 2 was all about volume, right? It was just pure volume and receptions. And what's funny is he averages 17.2 fantasy points per game in 11 games as a rookie, and 17.5 and 17 as a sophomore.
Yeah.
So very different seasons that equated to same per game production. And I'd say Achane was a lot more consistent overall when you compare him from year 1 to year 2. But when I'm looking at this, the reason why, I don't know why I'm not down on Achane. I just because again, we saw some of the big plays against the Jets at the end of the year, and against the Niners. He had a huge home run against the Niners, and the Dolphins just have a stink to them right now, right?
They
just have in my head.
It's hard to remove it out of your brain. It's like where do they go from here? But I'm looking at this game log, right? Like there was a lot of people who thought Devon Achane would never have 17 touches in a game, right? And there's 3 games where it's like
it was markedly consistent here.
Yeah, but just seeing that uptick, like getting to 17, getting to 15, right? The one game with 22 early in the year, like those are the things that encourage me about Achane because I think they can trust him. And look at those targets in reception numbers.
The receiving role was crazy. 600 yards, 6 touchdowns, 80 catches.
you know, like
It's
you
pretty
said,
wild.
the first year was just so efficient and big plays, and like then I saw him like be able to like death by 1,000 cuts, you know, in the fantasy game. I'm not saying he's killing teams by getting 20 plus touches in the receiving and running game, but he's killing other fantasy teams, right? Because he's just tatting up all these points. So it was a good, encouraging year of growth that I saw from HN. That I think as long as the Dolphins get shit right this year, he'll have another really good year.
It honestly reminded me of him at A&M because when you turn on the A&M tape, it wasn't like him hitting 80-yard touchdown runs. Like it was like him being like an every down grinder to an extent that surprised me.
Yeah, using, you know, this is like something we see with running backs all the time, like using your running back as a way to build big running back plays, like giving Achane multiple touches, wearing a defense down, and being able to break one loose finally. Like I watched so many 3-yard rushes at A&M, 4-yard rushes, 2-yard rushes, and then boom, there's a 15-yard play. It's like believing that Achane can do it, as long as the staff believes he can do it, like I'll be bullish.
I just it was hard for me to put HN or Breece ahead of Saquon. Like
What a year.
Yeah, 22 points a game in his first year in Philly. He was remarkably healthy all year. It's only the third time in his career that he's gotten to 16 games. So, you know what's coming next year, I guess. I don't want to jinx anything. You know, I'm worried about his age, of course, for Dynasty, but he looked explosive. Like he looked as explosive as he did in his rookie year. And it was the best year of his career. Like I know his rookie year, he's going to score more fantasy points because, you know, he had 91 receptions and 721 receiving yards.
Which is belligerent just, when you look back on that.
It's just Danny Dimes checked out. Was it Eli? I forget. Was it Eli? Was Eli still there?
Eli is his quarterback his rookie year.
Yeah, just check down Charlie to Saquon. You just have to feel good about it, man. Like he doesn't look like he's slowing down at all. They've built the entire offense identity around him. I'm guessing there will be the same. I mean, Kellen Moore might get hired, but does it really matter? Like they have that offensive line. Jalen Hurts is threat in the run game, only continues to open things up more for Saquon. AJ Brown, Devonta Smith only continue to open up things for Saquon. It's like the tailor-made offense for the guy. So I don't know. He's like could be the PPR RB1 again next year, and he's 28 years old. It's just hard for me to like discount that. And now if he gets like any CMC injury vibes early in training camp, I'm going to be so off him. I've got so much PTSD from that. But I'm just going to treat him as elite, right? Like CMC still went off at age 28. Because this age 28 I have is what he's going to be next year, right? 'Cause he's 27 right now.
Yeah, when the season starts, basically.
But CMC didn't have the big injury until this year at age 29. So even if you factoring off that, you can still get peak Saquon, which I think is still RB3 worthy in Dynasty, even if there's some risk.
Yeah, I think like if you're drafting today and you were doing a startup redraft, like Saquon would be like a perfectly more than fine first RB target on your team if maybe you missed the 2 elite young guys. But like fun stat for Saquon, like he produced the same amount, and I know the numbers can be weird, but it just paints a picture of what his Giants career is. But he produced the same amount of 120-yard rushing games in one season with the Eagles than he did in his entire career with the Giants. Like we might have been robbed of, you know, obviously the injuries, but like truly generational seasons as a fantasy running back and just running back in general. And what you said, most impressive, the speed is so evident. And like how patient he is behind that line. As long as he's healthy, he's probably got 2 to 3 years of like top RB contention left in the tank after what I saw this year. And plays in a fantastic team environment. So
it's just crazy. And I mean, he just went for 200 yards and 2 tutties in the divisional game. He ripped off the 62 and 78-yard touchdown.
He had 4 60-yard runs against the Rams alone this year. Like 60-yard home run touchdown plays against the Rams alone.
Gonna start? It's like doing the don't count Derrick Henry's stats against the Jaguars or whatever. Yeah, okay, bro. All right. Yeah, we won't do that. I have Saquon ahead of Achane, but I can see why you'd have Achane at 3 because of his age and his ability. I even had Breece ahead of Achane. And that feels a little hot takey. Breece has fallen off a bit, man. People are not feeling Breece lightning. I get it. But like year 3 wasn't that bad.
No, and people were just upset about how it happened. Like I think they watch a Jets game, like expecting to see big Breece plays, and like He was kind of a player that we all have these players in fantasy where it's like, just don't watch the game. Just like check your fantasy app at the end. But like the lows for Breece were really, really bad this year. Like my notes on Breece are like, statistics all aside, like this is still to me like a sleeping beast at the running back position. The Jets didn't have a single game this year where they gave Breece 20 touches. Not a single game where he got 20 touches this year. In the past 2 years, he only had 3 games with 20 or more rushing attempts. He had 3 games last year where they gave him 20, and one of those was that ridiculous game at the end of the year where they gave him 37 touches and miscalculated his yardage total because they wanted to get him to 1,000. And like when I think about a running back like Breece, it's like, how do you expect somebody to get going like without those touches? Like Breece is not Achane, obviously. He can make big plays, but it's like you need to build that up. You need to wear defenses down. And like the Jets were just hesitant to give that to him. Like Isaiah Davis and Braylon Allen both being drafted by the Jets is not great, but I think Breece offers something that many of these guys all have alike up here, like the rushing plus pass catching ability. He's just such a weapon in the open
Aaron
field.
Glenn's gonna love Breece, dude. He's gonna love him. Like DC's love someone like Breece Hall. Like a running back who can hit explosives. Like that's what you want. Someone you can drop in and change the game with one run.
Yeah, and their scheme just sucked so bad this year.
The Rodgers rushing scheme was garbage, people. I don't know. Like basically he just go up to the line of scrimmage and if they ran it, he checked it. Like it just was the Rodgers offense. And it did not cater to Breece's strengths at all as a rusher.
I feel bad for Breece because it's like, how are you going to knock what a Hall of Fame quarterback is telling you? But like, yeah, Breece is getting checked at the line. He knows like, oh, this rush is going for 2 yards because Rodgers doesn't like the coverage. And it's like, I hope that Aaron Glenn like puts his foot down and they run an offense that more resembles today's current NFL game and like still give Rodgers the ability to check in and out of things, but like just trust the game plan. Like I feel like it was a huge damper on Breece's production.
Like again, year 3 was disappointing, but he averages 15 fantasy points in year 3. Year 2, where he's the RB2, he averages 17 fantasy points per game. And then as a rookie, before he tears his ACL, he averages 16 fantasy points per game. So like it's well within the range of outcomes. Sure, like we weren't getting ceiling Breece, but I don't think we've seen ceiling Breece. I don't think 17 fantasy points per game is Breece's ceiling. I don't think he's hit it yet. And sure, his yards per carry has trended down each year. He's yet to rush for 1,000 yards, but the guy has shown serious chops as a pass catcher. And his pass catcher role got neutered because when you bring in Devontae Adams, you're not going to check it down to the running back when you've got Tay and you've got Garrett Wilson running around. Like running backs just don't get targets in that environment. So he loses a big part of his fantasy ceiling in that sense. But like if you give him a consistent offense where he gets consistent touches, where the offense has an identity, I think Breece could easily hit 18, 19 fantasy points per game. He'll be 25 next year. Like I'm still a big believer in Breece Hall. I'm definitely still someone that's going to draft him. But he's got a lot of Jets stink on him too.
Yeah, honestly, like this is sad to say, but like if Breece found his way to another team like that was in need of a running back and we're going to give him a feature role, like as a Breece Dynasty owner, I would be super bullish. As a Breece Jets fan, I would be super sad. But it's the way
it might happen. I don't think the Jets are going to pay Breece, are they? I mean, they could, I guess.
They have 4 core players at the same time. They'll all have to make decisions on basically Garrett, Jermaine Johnson, Sauce Gardner, and Breece Hall. We'll
definitely franchise tag Breece. That makes the most sense to tag him, but you never know.
It'd be tricky.
A lot of teams would take Breece Hall. I'll tell you that though. A lot of teams.
You think?
A lot of teams will like Breece Hall. Some teams desperately need running backs. Dallas Cowboys, Chicago Bears. Yeah, they'd be pretty into Breece Hall. The Denver Broncos. Whew, baby. Oh, baby. Moving on to tier 3 here. I can't believe he's our RB6. And it's pretty consensus. He's the RB6 on keep trade.
Previously a 3rd round, 4th round Dynasty rookie draft pick.
And that's none other than Bucky Irving. We all loved Bucky coming out of college. He was so good at Oregon. And then he had pretty bad testing. His testing was abysmal. Like it was crazy. He was super small and not fast, which you don't love to see. And then he comes out and plays on an NFL field, and it's like, oh, that's Oregon Bucky, right? That's the guy who just dominated the Pac-12, and he's just dominating the NFL. It's almost like the tape is more important than testing sometimes, Keegan. But,
Bucky
when are we ever going to learn?
Bucky makes a really good example of especially because Pac-12 is obviously not like highly regarded as like a tough division, like in college football. Like, yes, Pac-12 has some good years, but like I don't think people looked at Oregon either and thought like, well, Bucky Irving is playing, like in the SEC, right? Like we definitely value pre-draft SEC running backs more. And I want to make that note when we think about Ashton Jeanty as well. Like just because they play against certain competition and maybe their schedule doesn't look like Bama's, like let's just watch the tape, because like I fell victim to this, and like I was not high on Bucky. Like I wasn't high on Bo Nix either. I just wasn't a believer in that Oregon offense. And like we got one thing wrong, or we got two things wrong: Bo Nix and Bucky Irving. We were all right about Troy Franklin, but but there was a miss.
Yeah. With running backs, the stat that is very predictive of success in the NFL, or at least is a good signal versus other stats, is missed tackles forced. If running backs are generating missed tackles in college, there's a high likelihood they'll be good in the pros. So it's just something to take a look at. Bucky broke a shit ton of tackles at Oregon. He broke a shit ton of tackles with the Bucks. The fact that Liam Cohen's coming back, man, that's super exciting. I think we might see a little bit more of the same with Rachaad White, I guess, with them splitting. But, when they had to have it, man, and they had to win that game in New Orleans, he played 72% of the snaps, 55 and 57 in week 16, week 17. And then I'm trying to see.
Look at weeks 12 and 13, though. Like playing less than 55% of the snaps, 26 points, 27 points, right? I mean, let's just give this guy 25 more carries and see what happens. Let's get him above the 200 carry threshold in an NFL offense and see what happens.
And then in the playoff game, Bucky, 17 carries, 77 yards, 2 receptions, 6 yards, and a touchdown. Rachaad White had 1 carry and 2 receptions. So in the playoff game, Bucky was the star. So that tells you everything you need to know. And his numbers, his numbers were crazy, dude. Like, he's the only guy who rushed for 1,000 yards last season that did so on less than 200 carries. Like, he had 188. He had a higher yards per route run than JSN, Tyreek Hill, and Jerry Jeudy. Like, after the bye week, he averaged 18 fantasy points per game. And I don't think he played. Yeah, he only cleared 60% of the snaps once. Like, if he gets that playoff game usage, it's gonna get wild for Bucky. I'll just leave it at that. And it's just a really exciting player.
Yeah, I think the Liam Cohen thing is coming back is so important too.
It's really cool
because for young players, especially, I think, and I don't know if it changes much, but like for young players, especially, like keeping an offensive system the same year over year is going to be so big, especially because you build trust with a certain coordinator, and then they go into year 2 together. And I think Liam Cohen understands that like Bucky is a huge impact player for them, and Bowles understands that too. And I think it's just so big for them to all come back together.
I'm with you, man. And I think we're going to see more touches. I think everyone's argument against Bucky is that he wasn't the star, and I think we get the star treatment in year 2, and it's going to be
more
special.
touches for sure.
Yeah. Our RB7, Ashton Jeanty, there he is. I think some people would have him higher. I think some people were like, I'll put him at 3. I'll put him at 4.
There's some people are going to have him like above Breece, like there's some.
I think some people have him at
like
3,
top 5. Yeah.
I'm not falling into the MHJ trap.
I feel like that's what I did too. Like I'm a little bit burned by ranking rookies a little too high.
Let's see the landing spot. If he goes to the Dallas Cowboys, I could probably put him at 3. I probably could put him at 3.
Yeah, you could talk me into just about any ranking for Jeanty. Like if he goes to a team like the Cowboys, right? Or like even if he goes to somewhere like the Bears with Ben Johnson and they kick Swift to the curb, like I will be super bullish and excited about Jeanty. But it's like we're so early. It's January 23rd. Who cares if John's got him at 7, I got him at 8. Like we're kind of just protecting our asses here a little bit. I don't want to get too excited.
But it's just like, again, would you trade these players for the number 1 overall pick? I would trade Kyren. I would trade James Cook. I would trade Josh Jig. You know what I mean? Like these are the guys that I would trade for Jeanty, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, there's Gibbs, Bijan, Saquon, Devon, Saquon, Bijan, Breece Hall. I would not trade for Jeanty right now, just like knowing what I have and not knowing what Jeanty will be. But like Bucky and below, and I knew I was getting Jeanty back in the pick, I'll do that.
So teams that desperately need a running back. So I'm just looking at the NFL draft right now, the order. Browns, maybe. I don't see the Browns taking him at 2. Titans don't need a running back at 1. Giants, I mean, there's no way they do that.
That would be so funny. They won't. It would be hilarious.
The Patriots don't need him. The Jags don't need him. The Vegas is 6. You know, they've got a terrible owner, but they desperately need a QB over a running back. So you think they go QB at 6. Jets aren't going to take him. Panthers aren't going to take him. I could see the Saints maybe, but, you know, they've got Miller. They've got, I don't think they need him.
As long as
Chicago Bears
alive,
at 10.
He'll be in a Saints jersey.
Chicago Bears at 10 are interesting for Jeanty. Dallas Cowboys at 12 are interesting for sure. I mean, I think my favorite landing spot would be the Denver Broncos for him, but they're all the way at 20. And I don't see him falling to 20. That could be a Caleb Johnson team. Somebody who could be in this top 12 pretty soon in the right landing spot. Other than that, the Chargers could desperately need someone like GT. The Vikings need a running back big time. I think the Texans need a running back, but I don't think they need to take GT.
Yeah, they don't need just like the Vikings don't, because Aaron Jones will be back next year, I believe, and like Joe Mixon will be back. They don't need, but like to get younger at the position for those teams would be advantageous for them.
Yeah, definitely.
The Broncos at 20 would be an ideal.
That's my favorite
situation. Like I used to be a big Javonte guy, but like let's kick him to the curb. And like the other guys you can keep on the roster, but like they will not be making an impact if Jeanty goes to the Broncos.
Yeah, I think a running back to the Broncos makes a ton of sense. Their run game desperately lacked explosives. I can see Caleb Johnson on the Broncos, though.
Caleb Johnson getting drafted in the first round would dramatically change how I view dynasty running back landscapes. Draft capital for Caleb Johnson would, I don't know. I feel like some people are going to view him as like late day 2, but like if he was sneaking in the first round, I would be shifting my board right now.
Bro, he went off against some of the best competition. I always try and look at this. I'm trying to see his game log. You saw Caleb Johnson live, right?
I did. It was not like the like Caleb Johnson showing, I would imagine, but I mean like he scored on Iowa's first drive when I was in person and watching at UCLA. So
it's not like their schedule was like amazing, but Iowa State 187 yards, Minnesota 206. He goes for 86 in a score against Ohio State, 166 against Washington, 98 against Michigan State, 109 versus Northwestern, 135 versus Wisconsin, 164 against Maryland.
Dude, he's a dog.
He has a 73 yards. Yeah, a huge touchdown reception against Nebraska. 1,500 yards, 21 touchdowns. Who doubt you? Yeah, baby. When did Ashton Jeanty become a Caleb Johnson rant? I think multiple running backs go in the first round. That's one of my predictions. Teams desperately need running back, and they're going to chase what the Eagles and what the Ravens did for sure.
For anybody playing Dynasty this year, and you, like me, have a horrible room of running backs. Maybe it's Jaylen Warren and Javonte Williams and Tony Pollard. I don't know. I know a guy.
It's not even that bad. That's not even that bad, man.
If that's kind of what your room is, like this is your year, kids. You
know. Okay. RB8, Kyren Williams. I mean, it's just a tough player to rank, dude.
Production. That's all.
Okay, so in 12 games in 2023, he averages 21.5 fantasy points per game. That's freaking elite in 12 games. 17 games, he averages 16 fantasy points per game. It's pretty good. Efficiency was down in 2023, but I watched him a lot, and people like to give him a hard time. He's not an explosive player, but he was really effective and efficient and good between the tackles. Like he looked great in the playoff game against the Eagles, which is a notoriously hard defense to run on. Like his big thing is he's got fumbling issues. So he's an undersized A3 draft pick with fumbling issues, who the only reason he plays is because McVay loves him. So it's just risky. Like, what if McVay all of a sudden falls out of love with the guy? But he's shown us no reason. Like all the guy has done is spit in his face and cheat on him. And he's like, you know what, babe? It's all good. I forgive you. Let's just keep giving you the rock. That just kind of seems to be the vibe with Kyren. So I don't know. He's a good player. I'd have him probably at 8. The volume is
Shaun,
ridiculous.
We have to correct we have to correct everything we just said about Liam Cohen and the offense coming back to the Buccaneers.
Jags?
I am reading something that, I guess them firing Bucky means he's in
going?
Jacksonville right now.
Oh, wow. I don't think we got to re-record it, but that's funny.
No. I'm letting the listeners know we just learned live that Liam Cohen is potentially heading to Jacksonville as a head coach. Wow, that makes me so bullish on my PTJ shares. But anyways, I just wanted to say that because we did use Liam Cohen's like consistency in staying there as a big part of our ranking for Bucky. I don't know that I'm going to change him too much, but I just want to call it out.
Now, flip side, Liam Cohen loved the split. Maybe the new OC doesn't love the split, and it's more.
And
Bucky.
it's all
Boom.
Bucky.
Boom.
Okay.
Bull case. We're back. Bull posting.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, Kyren.
Yeah.
I don't know. He's good. He fumbles.
Look,
he's good.
Every fumble goes back in his hands or his teammate hands, anyways. But the issue that I always have with Kyren, like trying to figure out where to rank him, is like until he like has a stinker year as a running back in the NFL, I'm just not gonna argue it. Like I'll make jokes and like I'll be upset about the type of runner he is, and like it's not the most flashy style of running back, but he scores points, right? Like that's what we care about at the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean, he goes for 106 yards on 19 carries against the Eagles. He's a good player. He just is. Running back 9, James Cook.
Jimbo.
Another just really good player.
Yeah, we're in really good player territory here.
James,
the James Cook experience this year was electric because he scored so many touchdowns. You could look at that two ways.
Many.
40, I think it's like 46% of his fantasy points came from touchdowns this year.
After scoring none the previous year. He scored 6 touchdowns in 2023 and 18. We named a podcast over this phenomenon, by the way.
Yeah, but, I can confirm that there is most likely regression coming back to the mean for James Cook. But if his mean is somewhere in between those touchdown totals of 16 and 2, you're still looking at a very good fantasy running back tied to one of the best quarterbacks in the offense or in the NFL. So
yeah, I mean, he averages 13.5 fantasy points per game in 17 games in 2023. He averages 15.6 in 2024. 2023, he accumulates a shit ton of yards. 2024, he scores a shit ton of TDs. The guy's been ultra consistent, and he's super explosive. Like every week when I'd be doing the rankings, I'd be like, yeah, you're just going to need a big one from James. And what are you going to do? Jimbo hits a big one. The thing is, he doesn't play all the snaps. He like averages like 55% of the snaps. Like that's his thing. That's a committee.
They don't have a vision of James Cook ever being a like 70-80% touches guy, which is like totally fine. I think it's like why he's much farther down the rankings for us, but like he's still young, so explosive. And if he finds a way to score at least 10 touchdowns next year, like that's gonna be another great year for James Cook.
I think overall Cook is someone that I don't think I'm ever going to see him as like a true RB1 type year in and year out, even though he is. But if for some reason like Joe Brady leaves and they bring in a new OC and the OC's like, all right, James, you're 70%. Like you're the bell cow. Cook could have like an RB1 type season, like out of nowhere. Like to score 15.6 fantasy points per game on like 55% of the snaps. It's pretty crazy. Like it's pretty crazy. But now Bucky does 20 points per game on the same amount of snaps, which makes Bucky. But Cook is a really good player, and that's why we have him as RB9 in Dynasty. Someone that I think we honestly could have higher, but he's just played so long, and I think that gets in our head, especially in the Dynasty streets, is Josh Jacobs. You got to hear this, dude. Okay, so Josh Jacobs is RB10. You want to hear Josh Jacobs' 17-game pace in his career? Like what he averages. So over a 17-game period of his career, like if you take around all his games combined, 17. So this is average season. 300 attempts, 1,300 yards, 12 TDs, 56 targets, 44 receptions, 340 yards, 16 fantasy points per game.
Pretty damn good. Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty damn good, dude. He's been doing it since 2019. He's now on the best team of his career. Josh Jacobs is the truth.
He's gonna be 27 when the season starts. Like, that's still really young. Like, Josh Jacobs was saving people's fantasy season this year down the stretch. Like, he was really, really involved in their offense, and LaFleur loved him. And it was very nice to be validated on like some of the preseason takes I know I had and like other people in the community had, but it's like maybe LaFleur's running back, mentality was not a LaFleur thing. It was more indicative of Aaron Jones. And
yeah, you can't run Aaron Jones
AJ
300 times. You're going to kill Aaron Jones if you run him 300 times.
And people are like, Josh Jacobs is never going to be a workhorse. Like, LaFleur
which made no sense.
That. And it's like,
that's why you go get Josh Jacobs. He's literally a workhorse. Like, that's his thing.
I'm like, I don't think they went and acquired him so he could get 12 touches a game.
I just love how he's a good receiver. No one talks about it, but he's actually like legitimately a good pass catcher. Like,
he's just
he's
not
not
a ball player.
Yeah, I mean, he's just a ball player. Like that, you nailed it. That he's a ball player. And I'd rather have him than Jonathan Taylor, who you have at RB10. I have JT at RB11. Keep Trade Cut has JT, I think, pretty high. They've got him at
most
RB8.
Most people do. I'm somewhere in the middle of all that. I mean, he's just still young, and like he's one of the few wide receivers on this list, or wide receivers. He's one of the few running backs on this list that's had a 2K season. It's like not 2K season, but you know what I mean. Like,
I think he went over 2K total. I don't know if he rushed for. Yeah,
that's what I mean. Like 2K total, but it's like, I mean, gosh, the guy is just, he's got it in him. Does he have a really shitty situation? Like Josh Jacobs, James Cook. The reason we have him up here is like their situations are great. The teams are great. Jonathan Taylor's situation might be among the worst in this top 12, which makes it so tricky to talk about him.
It's trash. Yeah, I mean, I just went through the 17-game average. JT's 17-game average is 312 carries, 1,500 yards, 13 touchdowns. It's 37 receptions, 277 yards, and a tug on the through the air. Yeah, I mean, like, JT's end of the season run kind of covered up a pretty mid-season. You eliminated me from the fantasy playoffs right here, I think, when he scored 10 points.
Yeah,
and he immediately did that. That was fun.
Because it was the game he dropped the ball.
Yeah, don't get me started. Like, JT is like, he's still very good. Like, he still likely remains good. But he scored 38% of his fantasy production in week 16 through 18 last year. Like, I get it. He hurt his ankle. He dealt with that, then got healthy. Well, he's had like multiple ankle injuries for like 3 years in a row now.
Yeah, they're piling up, and those types of injuries on running back aren't great.
Now, what I wouldn't get super low on JT though, even though we're a bit low, because like if he ended up on the Broncos, I would, it would be pretty sweet. Like, it'd be pretty freaking sweet for someone like JT. If he ended up on the Vikings, like if he ended up on like a team that really needed a running back and a good scheme, JT could be a Saquon type guy, where it's like, whoa, like that was crazy. At age 27, just doing something crazy. But I mean, he just signed that contract. He's got like 3 years left on it. I think JT's still a very good player. I wouldn't get super down on him. I had him as a sell in January in Dynasty. I still have him as a sell, and I wouldn't get aggressive in a Dynasty startup with him. But he's still top 12.
Yeah, I like your note here. Like JT definitely could still fetch a 1 for you. And if like there was a year that you wanted to just get younger at running back, and there was an excess of talent, and maybe somebody's super bullish on JT, and you can get into, I don't know if you're going to get into top 6 picks by selling JT, but you can get yourself in the first round. And like there is a wealth of talent at the running back position this year, so might be a good
wealth of talent at running back and tight end. And like if you play in a tight end premium league, it is your time, brothers, right? It is your time. And I know an aging JT for a tight end sounds kind of crazy, but in tight end premium, it's a pretty damn important position now.
This is such a bro bust year for Dynasty rookie drafts.
Yeah, it's just rookie. It's running backs and tight ends. It's fucking sweet.
Yeah, it was old school.
So if you've gone all in on wide receiver for 3 years, like we all have, it's pretty sweet. That it's like, all right, cool. These are my needs. This is what I need. So
time to balance it out.
Yeah, or you just keep drafting receiver.
I might.
Dude, I'm gonna have to get chained down to not draft Travis Hunter. That guy is something. That guy is something else. All right, last guy here.
You playing in
12.
IDP leagues or what?
I think he's gonna be a receiver when it's all
He
said and done
probably
because
will be.
the money, baby. But I mean, he's unreal as a cornerback. I've got a comp for Travis Hunter. The way he runs routes, I'm not ready to leave it. It's not ready to leave the
Yeah,
garage
let's
yet.
hold that.
I'm
Let's
still
hold
putting
that.
some paint on the car, but you know, it's gonna be so crazy that Aidan's gonna spit out his drink. All right, last guy here, Chase Brown. Chase Brown is our RB12. Averaged 20.8 fantasy points per game after Zach Moss got hurt. Yeah, it's just kind of crazy.
Some bozos in this space drafted Zach Moss instead. You know, couldn't be me.
I mean, it was rough, dude. The first couple weeks were like, oh, this guy's droppable, and then all of a sudden it was like, nope, he's a bell cow. 20.8 fantasy points per game for Chase Brown. He was a super efficient runner, really good receiver. He made some plays as a downfield receiver that blew me away, and he built the trust of Joe Burrow. And I think more than anything, that's the most important thing on the Bengals. It's like if Joe Burrow likes you, you're in. Like that's the key.
You know,
I think this one could change, though. I think it could change.
Yeah, I would say there's a lot of running backs that you look at like as they get older, and it's like, well, he could be on a next team. Like they could move off for him. They could easily draft a running back. Chase Brown owners in Dynasty or people who want to draft Chase Brown are so lucky he plays for the Bengals. Like they are one of the cheapest, if not the cheapest
cheap.
organizations. Like, will they spend significant capital to go trade for a running back? No. They let Joe Mixon walk. They brought in Zach Moss to pair with Chase Brown. It's like now they have Chase Brown. Like, oh my God, we're getting amazing production on a bargain. Like they're the last team I think that would go out to pay money and add to the running back.
Yeah, their big solution was Khalil Herbert when Zach Moss got hurt. So
yeah,
I mean, I'm with you. There's always a fear that they could draft somebody, but I don't know. You know, Zach Taylor doesn't like to play rookies, so like, I think Chase Brown's locked in for another year of being like really good. I don't know how long it lasts, but I mean, he's going to be one of my favorite guys in redraft for sure. Dynasty's Dynasty. It's a little risky with a startup pick, in my opinion, but he looks great.
Yeah, he's probably one of the last people on this list. Well, I think Jacobs, Cook, and Chase Brown are all buy options because, you know, running backs just don't fetch the same value. And like he might be cheap enough, but like I would send out some like early seconds for those and see if people bought, because those are all three really good running backs.
Like I could see potentially, because I have Chuba and CMC right underneath Chase Brown. CMC could be fully healthy next year. And dude, like with John Brooks' knee injury, I could see putting Chuba ahead of Chase Brown, but
with
Chase
the resurgence of Bryce Young last year, like the Panthers leaning into Chuba and obviously Brooks' injury, like Chuba is such an interesting dynasty asset. Like I have him on a dynasty team. Like I'm just like thanking my lucky stars for it.
Just got extended. He just got that contract too. So like Chuba's locked in. He's going to be a round 2 pick in redraft next year.
A what?
He's going to be an end of round 2 guy for sure. Like or
Chuba?
beginning of round 3. Yeah.
We'll see.
Nah, for sure. He's going to go where Kyren went, or where like Travis Etienne or Isaiah Pacheco went.
My brain is not there yet. I'm thinking about where players are going to go for redraft. Let me see the first big board, you know, room, and we'll go from there. But
hey, big board can show me what they want to show me. I just know ball, brother.
That is, yeah, I guess maybe. I mean, he's definitely not going to be drafted where he was last year. That's something for sure.
If Chuba's a 4th round pick, yeah, I'm gonna draft him in the 4th round every single time. What are you talking about? Like that guy's gonna get like RB1 usage.
I'm looking at this list and I'm thinking about like after Chuba, like I know you have CMC like right out of this range. Chuba, Derrick Henry is Derrick Henry. I don't even know if he deserves a rank because I don't want to put him too low. I don't want to put
He's
him
his
too high.
own
Like,
thing. He's his own thing.
But I'm looking at this list of names like Kenneth Walker, Joe Mixon, Isaiah Pacheco, David Montgomery. Tyrone Tracy has like kind of the age thing, but he is an older prospect. Alvin Kamara, James Conner, Brian Robinson, and Zach Charbonnet. Like I would almost put Caleb Johnson ahead of all of them, minus Derrick Henry. Like I would almost have Trayvon Henderson like above most of these guys. Like just because of age and the production that I can get out of a rookie or some other players. Like, I just don't see a lot of value. That's the problem. We rank 24 wide receivers, no problem in Dynasty. And with running backs, it's like, fuck.
Bro,
Once you get
Bucky's
past,
already the RB6.
yeah,
like people are that desperate for running back talent. Like Kenneth Walker kind of flopped. Like he's just always injured, and they also have Zach Charbonnet. These running back classes weren't that good, dude. We got 2016, which was a huge infusion of talent, and then the Bijan Achane,
Gibbs.
Achane, and Gibbs draft is awesome. Like we have our three there. Charbonnet is showing promise. You know, I like Tajay, but Tajay can't stay healthy. Like, and he's there are guys in that draft that could, you know, set this trend. Because you talked about 2016. You talked about how the guys like maybe like when they get, because now they're getting older, maybe this whole 26-year-old thing doesn't matter anymore. And I'm like, or maybe they're all just from that 2016 draft, and that draft is just like the best running back draft class ever. CMC, Saquon, Aaron Jones, Alvin Kamara, like Joe Mixon. You know, it's just that crazy draft class where all these guys are still so good that we're in that class. So, yeah,
I see the
I don't
most
know.
movement year over year with this because so much new talent comes in. Like every year we talk about, at least for the past couple of years, like Chase and Jefferson. You know, now ARSB is in that conversation, and there's so many same guys that just maintain their position. But like outside of Gibbs and Bijan, like this looks very different than what we had last year going into the season, ranking running backs in the Dynasty landscape.
Achane was in there. But yeah,
CMC was in there, but like we were not unsure like where to have Saquon. CMC was way up. Bucky Irving was nowhere near this. You were bullish on Kyren and had a much higher, I think, than me and Aidan did.
I think I had him at
Jimbo
4 or
Cook
5.
was somewhere around the same, and Jonathan Taylor was much higher. There was no mention of Chase Brown. Like it's just crazy how much it changes.
It does. There's always new faces coming in. But yeah, dude, looking at this list makes me now just like pretty emboldened if I was in a startup to draft a lot of these rookie running backs.
Yeah, this could be your next class of like
elite
substantial amounts of talent. Yeah, throughout the rounds, like not just round one. Like it's gonna be a lot better than the guys who started. I think the year that we started one of our dynasty startups was when Javonte Williams was a rookie. What year did he get drafted?
That class stunk.
Yeah, like that's a good example of like doing a startup in a year where like you grab
2018.
2018 is Javonte Williams.
Yeah, 2019.
Okay,
2019 NFL draft. I mean that draft class is iconic, right? But like I'm trying to see.
Yeah,
wait, no, no. I'm sorry, it's not iconic. That's the 2020 draft, I guess. I'm looking here.
We're derailing for the listeners here, but the point I was trying to make is like, you know, this is such a good year to load up on RB talent, and like there's just so many misses at the position. I haven't been this certain in a long time this class is going to be a good class. So look at these rankings, like use our thoughts and like try and go make some trades and like get into that first round if you're not, or like try and acquire some of these elite guys because the landscape changes every year, and what's hot one year is not hot the next year in running backs.
Yeah. It's a 2019 draft class. Josh Jacobs, Miles Sanders, Darrell Henderson, David Montgomery, Devin Singletary, Damian Harris, Alexander Madison. Those were all the 1 through 3. Rounds 1 through 3 guys.
Oh my God.
Yeah, not a great infusion of talent. And then you go look at the 2020 draft class. Rounds 2 through 3. We didn't have a first round draft pick in that one. Oh no, we did. It was Clyde, DeAndre Swift, JT, Cam Akers, J.K. Dobbins, A.J. Dillon, Antonio Gibson, Keyshawn Vaughn, Zach Moss, Darrington Evans. That's it. Those are your day 1 and 2 get picks.
Oh.
Yeah, I mean J.K. Dobbins. That was robbed of us. J.K. Dobbins was like actually
was good. Yeah, was special.
Yeah, he was actually really good. All right. Well, that's it for our running back ramble. We appreciate you guys for hopping on and joining. Keegan, thank you, man, for joining, talking ball. It's always a pleasure getting on here, chatting with you, man. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Until next time.